Okay, for these leotards, we're going to use the knit stitch. Hopefully you have a knit stitch. I don't draw very well, but the knit stitch is a diagonal, straight across, diagonal, straight across, diagonal, straight across. That's what I'm going to use to sew them all together. And then when I get to the point where I'm going to put the elastic on, I'm going to be doing the 3-point zigzag, which is also your knit stitch. And basically what that is 3 stitches diagonal to the right, 3 stitches diagonally to the left, and it goes back and forth. So these are your 2 stitches, the knit stitch and the 3-point zigzag. If you don't have either one of these, try using a very small zigzag and hope that'll work for you. I've tried it in the past and with different levels of success, but you can give it a try. Okay, I've got, this is leg number, another one of the legs I'm going to put together. I've already done one to save time. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking my, printer's going off, I'm taking my fabric and I'm putting my right sides together and I'm lining them up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a couple pins in here to keep the fabric together where it needs to be. But you don't want to sew over your needles or your pins, not with the knit stitch. Well, some people tell you with no stitch, but definitely not the knit stitch. Okay, got that lined up. Oops, right needle. Okay. Alright, so like I said, I'm on stitch number 3, which is a diagonal across, diagonal across. I'm going to use that to do the whole thing until I get to the elastic. Okay, so my machine is already set for that. So I'm going to start at the crotch area and I'm going to work down. So I'm going to let my machine do all the work for me, but I'm just going to guide it, basically. Out of alignment again. Okay. It didn't line up very well. Okay. Oh boy, I'm recording, that's why it's not working. The other one worked fine. Okay, let's go there. Because I'm giving you a 1/4 inch seam allowance on here. So there's no back stitch with the knit stitches or the 3-point zigzag, so just start it. Okay, let your sewing machine do all the work. All you're going to do is just guide it. That's it. Okay, what I do is, because there is no back stitch on the knit stitch, I just tie this into a double knot. And you really don't have to because your stitch is so small, but I do, just so I know it's secure and it's not going to come out. And it only takes a second. cut that off. Okay, so now you've got that. Cut off the top piece. And before I trim my edges down, I'm going to turn this inside out and I'm going to try it on the doll. Because I'm going to try it on now because if I want to make any adjustments, make it tighter up and down the leg or whatever, it's much easier to do it now than it would be to wait until I finish the inside seam and put the elastic on. So it's inside out. Okay, this fabric isn't stretching as much as the other fabrics I was using, so in this case I probably would have been better off to make these a little bit longer than what I've got. But I'm going to go ahead and go with them anyway because I kind of like them that way, so because then they don't you don't get that buckling around the ankle. So yeah, this is going to be fine. See how she fits good in the crotch area? She's got enough to go around her waist, and it's good. So what I'm going to do is take this off, turn it back inside out, and I'm going to trim down my seams. Down. I'm cutting this to about 1/8 of an inch, and the reason I'm doing that is because you can see the seams through the to the front of the leotards. So the smaller they are, the less noticeable they are, and usually that's what they'll do on store-bought leotards. You'll hardly even see the seam at all. It'll just be sewn together. Okay, so I've got that. Here's my leg number 2. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn one of these inside out, turn them right side out. Okay, I've got that. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to stuff it down the other leg. I do it this way because it's the easiest way to sew them together. I mean, you don't have to do it this way. You can just sew the seams together, but it's just easier for me to do this. So now I'm going to line up my 2 inside seams. Here's your inside seam here and seam here. So put that there and put a pin in it. You're going to be sewing 1/4 of an inch, so try and line your seams up. Okay, there's one. Put these 2 together. Sharp. And this side. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sewing in a U shape. Okay. So now I'm going to sew all the way around. If you prefer, you can sew down to the middle and then stop and then come up and sew back down to the middle. Or you can sew in a complete U is what I do. I sew all the way around till I get to the top again. And same thing with this, I let the machine do all the work. I'm just going to guide it. Okay, so now all I'm going to do is trim this down again like I did. You don't have to because nobody's going to see this. So if you want to keep that full 1/4 of an inch seam at the top, there's no problem with it. Just go right ahead and do it. Or trim it down. It's just personal preference. Because nobody's going to see the top of your leotards anyway. Because you're going to have either a skirt or a dress or a pair of pants on. But if you're going to make like a tutu for a ballerina, I'd probably trim it all the way around. Because this fabric doesn't stretch as much as the leotard material or the knit fabric, I would probably add another 1/4 of an inch around the toes because I think it could have used a little bit more fabric. I don't think I'm going to get a tight fit in the crotch area, but we'll see. Okay, so there we go. She's all done on that. The only thing left now is to add the elastic. So we can go ahead and turn that out to the other side. And we're going to put an elastic on the waistband. I found some thick white elastic around the house, so I can get these done today. Okay, so as far as the elastic goes, my doll's waist and most of the American Girl dolls are 10 inches. So I'm using a piece of elastic that is 9.5 inches. And then I'm going to sew, I'm just going to use a straight stitch on this one and sew my elastic together. Probably as close to the edge as I can get. Out. My husband again. Men. Can't live with them, can't live without them. Debatable. Okay, so there's my elastic sewn together. Now I'm going to attach this to my pair of leotards. So you think you want to turn your, that didn't line up very well, let me turn that off. You think you want to turn it down to the back, but in this case when you add elastic you're going to actually turn that seam to the front. So you're taking the good sides together and putting them together like this. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to encase that open seam in the elastic, so there's no open seam in the back of the leotards when you're finished making them. And I will show you what I mean on these. See if you can see this. I don't know if you can or not. This was one of the first ones I tried, so my stitching isn't that good. But I took my elastic and I sewed my zigzag stitch here, and then I put a straight line of stitching underneath, and that so I have no raw edges on these leotards, and that's what that turn down will give you, is no raw edges. So right sides to right sides, turn it down and pin it. I'm probably going about 1/4 of an inch, I would say. Yeah, about 1/4 of an inch. If I had wider elastic, I could go wider. But I set this pattern up so you should have enough for a nice elastic casing if you're just using regular casing on here. Okay, so now that we've got that, I'm going to take my elastic and I'm going to divide it into my 4 pieces so I know exactly where it's even on all sides. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now I've got my edges, so I'm going to line up my elastic, and I'm going to put it so that when I sew my zigzag on there, you're not going to see that open seam underneath on the bottom. So I'm going to go about maybe 1/4 of an inch from the top of the elastic, and then I'm just going to put my pin in there. You see how I'm doing it? I'm actually encasing that open seam, that open selvage, inside up against the elastic. And that's what I'm going to zigzag over. Line these 2 up. And at the back. I just turned my elastic to one side. It's just too hard to try and spread it open. And that one. And number 4. The last corner. Okay, so we've got the piece in, and check and make sure that your elastic is sort of even, your fabric sort of even around the inside of the elastic, and this is too much, so that's not even, so I'm going to move that over a little bit to make it a little more even. Yep, perfect. Okay, so at this point I'm going to use my zigzag, 3-point zigzag stitch. In that case it is my number 5. I don't know what kind of machine you have, but I'm going to switch over to number 5. And I'm going to sew on the inside so I can see exactly where I'm sewing to catch all that thread. So it doesn't really matter where you start. So I'm just going to go ahead and start right here, towards the back, and put that down and start to stitch. The thread got caught. Okay, I'm a little more than a quarter of an inch on this one, so I'm going to take it off and move it down a little bit. I don't know if you can see. Okay, I am stretching it a little bit when I have to get some of the ease in some of the, something just happened. I lost my fabric. I lost my needle. Yep, I just got lost. My thread just broke. Okay, well, anyway, so far so good. It's looking good. Let me re-thread and finish it off. I don't know why it broke. Can you see that on the front? Okay, so if you look at this, you'll see I have open fabric here. That's the one I turned down. So after I get this seam done, I'm going to put a straight seam across the very bottom. So let me re-thread and finish this up. Because my bobbin is getting low. I don't know why my machine does that, but when my bobbin gets low, it starts acting strange, not happy for some reason. Okay, so where was I? I'm about here somewhere, so let me get back in there. Home stretch. Okay, like I said, there really isn't a reverse on this. It's just a straight up and down, so I just do that a couple times when I'm doing on the zigzag. Okay, triple threads. Okay, one more stitch and we're home free. So on this stitch, I'm going to just go to a regular straight stitch, period. That's it. So that's 0 on my machine. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one more stitch in, but this time I'm going to stretch the elastic as I sew it because I'm using a straight stitch and there's no give in a straight stitch. So you can sew either on the top like this or you can sew underneath. I like to sew underneath to make sure I don't catch any of the other fabric that to go like this. So I'm going to sew on this side about 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of the elastic, and these are done. piece of elastic sticking out. Okay, we are done with these. Okay, there's that, and let's try them on the doll, see how they look. Try and get the feet right. Yeah, I would have made these a little bit bigger. Yep, I should have added more fabric to the bottom because I was using the leotard fabric and it stretches much better than this netting does. But you get the idea. Close enough. Okay, and there's your feet. And you can even trim that a little bit lower if you want to so you don't see it, but once the doll's facing forward you wouldn't see it anyway. But you know, it's all a personal preference thing. But yeah, the knits fit much better than this netting does, but it's pretty. These look beautiful with a nice dress. Anyway, yeah, I would have done a better job on that. I think if I would have given myself probably maybe another quarter to a half of an inch more on the feet with this kind of fabric. So, you know, it's something you need to think about. Like, for example, these black ones here, they have such a big stretch in them that I had to remake them like 4 times to get them to fit the doll right. And now the last time I put them together, I think I might have gone a little bit too small. But I'll put these on to show you what these black ones look like. These are a knit fabric that is got a brick pattern on it, and that's just a different look on fabric. And I use that Donna Karina fabric. Anyway, that's it for the leotards. My next video will be on, I don't know, maybe socks, I don't know, something. But I hope that gives you an idea of how to make your own